So, hi everyone, welcome to our last webinar. So, as you know, it's our fourth and last webinar, and we're going to talk in detail in a few minutes. But before we start, let's begin with an activity. It's a paper folding activity. So I'm going to take you to a website. Hopefully I can succeed in that.
We're gonna ask them to do folding, paper folding, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you might want to get like a small piece of paper in the meantime.
Right. So you still see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just to be on the safe side.
Do you all have a piece of paper?
I'm going to do the instructions in a minute. All right.
Okay.
Well, it's better. It's something that you can get rid of later on, because we're going to do something on the paper. So what we need is a paper, and it's probably going to take some time, sometime around 10 minutes. So what we're going to do is that, so we're going to hold the paper, and then we're going to fold it into two, fold in half. Everybody, just follow me. And then we're going to fold it again in half. All right. Are we good? Now we're going to tear off the bottom right corner. All right. And then we're going to turn the paper upside down. All right. And now we're going to tear off the bottom right corner again, the other one upside down.
Hiram is
right.
really doing this well.
So now.
This is my CV. I think it's flawed.
All right. Now open your paper, open your sheets. All right, so this is what I got. What about you? Just hold it so that everybody can see if we have different things. Does anybody have something they need to remove?
Yeah, I'm not good at following instructions.
All right, everybody just hold the paper. I want to see if everybody has the same thing. Oh, so you see that?
Dila, what do you have?
I'm done.
All right.
No, she doesn't. I showed mine, so you should show yours.
All right. So I guess some people have different things. For example, look at my paper. So mine is kind of the holes are on that part, but Nejati's part holes are on this part of the paper.
Yeah.
Right?
At least we're not alone. Jansu and Dila and I, have holes in the middle.
Oh my goodness. All right. Wow. So now I'm going to ask a few questions about what we have done just in a minute ago. So what do you notice? What we notice is that we have different kind of holes. We have different parts removed out of the sheet. So the second question is that, how did you feel when you saw that your paper looked like, what your paper looked like in comparison to everyone else's paper? I mean, did anybody think that they had done the exercise incorrectly when they saw others' paper? I mean, did you have that kind of feeling? So did you at any point did you feel that you've kind of misunderstood the instruction?
I thought that I did something wrong.
I don't know who is talking. Sorry. Dila, was it you or?
No,
No, it was
It was Jansu.
Jansu. So you thought you did something wrong?
yeah.
All right. I guess, Dila, you did something different too. And how did you feel about that?
bad.
The whole
What did you feel bad?
I felt like an untalented person.
Oh.
Actually, I'm
All
good
right.
with these things, like these paper things, but I don't know what happened.
All right, probably a different perspective. So how could there be so many interpretations when we gave everyone the same instructions? You know, the same. I read out the same instruction to everybody, but the results were kind of different. Dila and Jansu got something different, but I guess the remaining people did the same thing just as I did. So why do you think we had such kind of differences despite getting the same instruction? What are your opinions? Anybody else? Or let me just say, could there have been a different way to do the exercise in the correct way so that everybody would get the same result out of their sheet? I guess we're too quiet today. All right.
I think
All right.
that we should have the same paper.
So you mean, I mean, what we have as material could be different, and that's why we have different things?
Maybe it may be a reason for that.
Got it. So this is just one way of looking at the issue. Anybody else? Why did we get some different results?
I think you should have controlled all step by step.
So does it mean that, I mean, on the part of the listener or the person who gives the instruction?
Who gives instructions should control step by step.
So does it mean that I couldn't give the instruction clearly step by step?
No. You did well, but to make sure everybody's doing it the true way.
Could be. All right. Now let's consider that the paper represents your opinion or perspective. And what does the exercise tell you about perspectives? So these sheets represent our opinions or perspectives regarding everything in life. And if we consider these perspectives and opinions, what would you say? Does it make you think of anything? I mean, differences, similarities? What comes to your mind when you think or link these exercises with your opinions and perspectives?
Actually, we did hear what we hear from you, not we see. Because we see in the left side, correct, but you said the right side. So some of us doing it like seeing it, but some of us doing as you said.
Got it. All right. And when you think about that, how can you relate it to your opinions and perspectives in life? Let me remind you of something from your linguistics courses. I'm sure you are familiar with locution, illocution, perlocution from your linguistic courses. Are you familiar with these terms?
Yeah, a bit. All
right, let me just give you a concrete example. For example, just imagine someone, a lady wearing a perfume and then you smell it and you say, well, it smells very nice. What do you mean by the literal words and what the intended meaning and what impact it has on the person could be different. It could be taken as a compliment, or it could mean that your perfume smells awful. Could it be?
Exactly.
So exactly the same thing here as well. So when I gave the instructions, I was reading out the same thing to everybody else, but what impact it had on you was quite different. And that is why the results were different. All right. I think we should go on with the PowerPoint. Now, Denise, would you like to add something at this point?
I think we'll come back to this towards the end as well. That like when we hear or read things, Adnan emphasized impact and how words or the things that we hear have different impact on us, and this is mostly because we have different background knowledge or histories in terms of these issues. So when we hear things, we interpret, so hearing and the literal meaning of words, what they actually convey, is different from the meaning that we make, the interpretations we make. And when we hear the instructions, we not always hear it in terms of what he actually says, but according to what we have in front of us, and and how we make sense of it, the instructions, according to the material or the background knowledge that we have.
It's a kind of filter that goes through. So what we hear does not directly go into our minds, but rather there's a filter, and this filter oftentimes is our socio-cultural background. And when it crushes this filter, it moves through this filter, and what you understand, what you interpret, as Denise said, out of these kind of languages or words is totally different. Not exactly the same as what I had in mind or what other people have in their minds. All right. Oops. All right. So today our webinar is about peace building and immigration. And here is our agenda. So we're going to talk about immigration, language instruction and immigrants, immigration in Turkey, peace building, and regarding peace building, we will talk about differentiated instruction as well. And with this agenda, our objectives are to introduce student teachers, key terms and concepts related to immigration and peace building, to enable you to apply peace building pedagogy in the language classroom. We'll talk about these terms or these things in a few minutes. To enable you to cultivate resilience, that's very important, in your students and institutions. To enable you to provide differentiated instruction in the language classroom, and to enable you to empower your students coming from different socio-cultural backgrounds. All right, I'd like to ask a very simple question, which I think could be simple, but still it embeds a lot of difficulties as well. So what does it mean to be a refugee? And I guess you can relate that very picture of the newspapers to that term as well. So what do you think it is? What does it mean to be a refugee? Your own understanding of being a refugee. Who is a refugee?
For example, if we think about the Syrian people, they are forced by some terrorist groups to flee their country, so they become refugees. Mm-hmm. But instead, if they want to go to another country, they might be immigrants.
All right. So here comes another term, immigrant and refugee.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Would you like to add something more?
Reminds me of the term minority.
Mm-hmm.
And what is minority?
The minority in a society.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I guess, oh, okay. I'm going to click on the link and it's going to take us to a talk video, sorry. All right.
Around the globe, there are approximately 60 million people who have been forced to leave their homes to escape war, violence, and persecution. The majority of them have become internally displaced persons, which means they have fled their homes but are still within their own countries. Others have crossed a border and sought shelter outside of their own countries. They are commonly referred to as refugees. But what exactly does that term mean? The world has known refugees for millennia, but the modern definition was drafted in the UN's 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees in response to mass persecutions and displacements of the Second World War. It defines a refugee as someone who is outside their country of nationality and is unable to return to their home country because of well-founded fears of being persecuted. That persecution may be due to their race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion, and is often related to war and violence. Today, roughly half the world's refugees are children, some of them unaccompanied by an adult, a situation that makes them especially vulnerable to child labor or sexual exploitation. Each refugee's story is different, and many must undergo dangerous journeys with uncertain outcomes. But before we get to what their journeys involve, let's clear one thing. There's a lot of confusion regarding the difference between the terms migrant and refugee. Migrants usually refers to people who leave their country for reasons not related to persecution, such as searching for better economic opportunities or leaving drought-stricken areas in search of better circumstances. There are many people around the world who have been displaced because of natural disasters, food insecurities, and other hardships. But international law, rightly or wrongly, only recognizes those fleeing conflict and violence as refugees. So what happens when someone flees their country? Most refugee journeys are long and perilous, with limited access to shelter, water, and food. Since the departure can be sudden and unexpected, belongings might be left behind, and people who are evading conflict often do not have the required documents like visas to board airplanes and legally enter other countries. Financial and political factors can also prevent them from traveling by standard routes. This means they can usually only travel by land or sea and may need to entrust their lives to smugglers to help them cross borders. Whereas some people seek safety with their families, others attempt passage alone and leave their loved ones behind with the hopes of being reunited later. This separation can be traumatic and unbearably long. While more than half the world's refugees are in cities, sometimes the first stop for a person fleeing conflict is a refugee camp, usually run by the United Nations Refugee Agency or local governments. Refugee camps are intended to be temporary structures, offering short-term shelter until inhabitants can safely return home, be integrated to the host country, or resettle in another country. But resettlement and long-term integration options are often limited. So many refugees are left with no choice but to remain in camps for years and sometimes even decades. Once in a new country, the first legal step for a displaced person is to apply for asylum. At this point, they are an asylum seeker and not officially recognized as a refugee until the application has been accepted. While countries by and large agree on one definition of refugee, every host country is responsible for examining all requests for asylum and deciding whether applicants can be granted the status of refugee. Different countries' guidelines can vary substantially. Most countries have several duties towards people they have recognized as refugees, like the guarantee of a minimum standard of treatment and non-discrimination. The most basic obligation towards refugees is non-refoulement, a principle preventing a nation from sending an individual to a country where their life and freedom are threatened. In reality, however, refugees are frequently the victims of inconsistent and discriminatory treatment. They are increasingly obliged to rebuild their lives in the face of xenophobia and racism. And all too often, they aren't permitted to enter the workforce and are fully dependent on humanitarian aid. In addition, far too many refugee children are out of school due to lack of funding for education programs. If you go back in your own family history, chances are you will discover that at a certain point, your ancestors were forced from their homes, either escaping a war or fleeing discrimination and persecution. It would be good of us to remember their stories when we hear of refugees currently displaced, searching for a new home.
Do you want to continue the PowerPoint, Anna?
Yes. So should I share my screen again?
I need to stop. Okay.
All right. That is so powerful. All right. So before we move on, I'd like to ask a few questions about the video. So my first question is, according to the video, how many people have been displaced? What number did you hear?
60 million, I heard.
Yeah, exactly, 6 million, and that number is very even higher, and we will see that in a minute. So why are people displaced? What reasons are suggested at the very beginning of the video?
Financial, political factors,
Mm-hmm.
fear of being persecuted are
All right.
some reasons.
All right, all right.
Necati wrote more.
Oh, I can't see the chat box. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm following. Don't worry.
All right. Thank you, Dennis, for popping up in. All right. So United Nations has a definition of refugees. So do you remember what that definition is? How do they define a refugee? And that definition was suggested after World War II, I guess around 1950s, the 1950s. Yeah. Any ideas? Or let me ask another way of, so what kind of reasons are suggested as to why people are referred to as refugees? What reasons are suggested for that?
Refugees are the ones who are unable to travel, going abroad because of financial, political factors.
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
Yeah, it's kind of that. It says race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular group, and political opinions are the basic reasons for being a refugee. And according to the definition suggested by the United Nations, and these people flee from their country because of some violence or persecution they face in their own nationality country. So the next question would be, what is the difference between a refugee and a migrant? How do we differentiate between these two terms? Are they the same?
No, being migrant is not about persecution, but for better conditions, better financial conditions or life conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Migrants are intentionally leave the country, but the refugees are forced to leave because of war.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right. And my last question would be, What is an asylum seeker? Who's an asylum seeker? What is asylum? All right. So an asylum seeker would be is a person who leaves his or her country because of violence or persecution, and they go to another country and seek for refugee, to be recognized as a refugee. And the first step of being recognized as a refugee is called asylum seeker. So think of the Syrians coming to Turkey. So they escaped from wars and violence and persecution. So when they entered Turkey, they made some official requirement. I mean, they had to meet some official requirements to be recognized as a refugee. And until being recognized as a refugee, they were referred to as asylum seekers. Does that make sense?
Do you know what asylum means in Turkish?
Sığınma talebi diye biliyorum.
Asylum seeker.
İltica.
İltica etmek. Mülteci.
All right. And then once they apply for this asylum, they are recognized as refugee, and we call it mülteci. All right. So I'm going to present some statistics from the United Nations about the displaced people and refugees. But before that, I'd like to ask the first question. So according to the UN, and you heard in the video as well, but I said the number stated in the video is lower than the number suggested by the United Nations. So how many people are forcibly displaced worldwide? What guess do you have? How many people are forcibly displaced? Any ideas?
100 million?
100 million?
Yep.
8 million?
8 or 80?
80.
80, all right. Very close to that. All right. Let's see. All right. According to the UN's statistics, about 68.5 million people are forcibly displaced worldwide. And 40 million are internally displaced, and 25.4 million are refugees. And of that number, 3.1 million are asylum seekers. All right. And I'll show one more statistics, a kind of table. But before showing the table, I'd like to ask some questions. So, what countries are the host countries for refugees? Can you name some of the countries? The host countries where refugees live.
Turkey.
Germany.
Germany.
Germany. Greece.
What else?
Canada.
Uh-huh.
USA also, I know.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Uh-huh. So what about people coming from the countries where they flee from their countries? I mean, what countries are these? Does it make sense? Because there are some kind of wars, or there's some violence or persecution in their country, and they flee their country. So which countries or what countries are these? All right, let's see. All right. So 85% of the displaced people oftentimes live in developing countries, and these developing countries are Islamic Republic of Iran, Lebanon, Pakistan, Uganda, Turkey. So we are the hosting countries for refugee people, and oftentimes the refugees come from South Sudan, Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Somalia. So these are the countries where people flee or escape from wars, violence, and persecution. All right. Now I have some warm-up questions again. So the first question, why do we discuss immigration and peace building in our webinars? What relation does it have to social justice? Any ideas, any guesses?
Because each individual has the right to
Live?
participate in the educational process. I mean, we might have some Syrian students, especially in my first year of practicum experience. I heard that in the second grade, there was 2 Syrian students. So they were having difficulties in understanding Turkish because they don't know it. So
Yes.
we might face with Syrian students or other kind of refugees. That's
yeah. Refugee students from different countries, right?
Yep.
All right. Any more ideas about that? And I'm going to move on to my second question. Why is language instruction important for immigrants? You can focus on Turkey and you can answer that question by just focusing on our very, very country.
For example, in my practicum school, last week I observed there was a girl who is refugee, and she doesn't know Turkish, but she just attended the classes. But unfortunately, she doesn't understand. She just waste her time. Can't do maths. Can't, and teacher also ignores her. I asked my mentor teacher, who is she? Why don't you care her? Why don't you this girl attends participate the class? And she said to me, she's just a refugee. She doesn't know Turkish, and I don't care. Like she like that, and I don't care. And it was really awful. I really upset because they're going to be. They should. They can't. Education is really it's basic right for everyone, but they can't get the education, unfortunately.
Yes, and
it just seems to get education, just seems. They can't live actually without knowing the language of the country they live.
Right, right. And in the mainstream education in Turkey, we know that Turkish is the medium of instruction, and without a knowledge of that language, it is impossible, almost impossible to follow the courses, the instruction in the school. Yeah, that's a very good example. All right. And when we say language instruction, which language are we referring to? There, L1, for example, for Syrians is Arabic, English, or the local language, I mean Turkish. So what do you understand when we say language instruction? Which language comes to your mind? It doesn't have to be just one. It could be all. What do you think?
I don't know what sign language comes to my mind. I don't know, but.
All right. I mean, in terms of saying language instruction, are we talking about teaching Turkish, teaching English, or teaching their L1, like Arabic?
If they're going to take education in Turkey, my opinion is they should learn Turkish first, because all courses are Turkish. That's why I think like that.
All right. Any more ideas?
I think they should know English, because lingua franca, as you know.
What importance does it have for their life? Why should they know English when they live in Turkey? Could it be of some help at some point in their life?
So Necati said for language teachers, English and Turkish, and for the other teachers, it can be Turkish only.
Thank you, Nejati. All right, let's move on. We'll try to answer these questions as we move on, and at some point I'll remind you of these questions. All right. Well, I have to take this way because I can't see my screen. All right. So the first reason is that every language used by the refugees helps them build resilience at the individual, family, and community levels. Both home language and their traditional languages matter, of course. So what do you understand when we say resilience? What is it? So if they know Turkish, if they know English, and if they know their mother tongue, they will build resilience. What is that? What do you understand? Any ideas?
Adapting? Maybe.
Could be.
Elasticity about individual family.
All right. So let's see. What is resilience? Resilience is having the internal resources to overcome diverse circumstances. So it means kind of empowering these people and to be a part of the community in which they live. You know, they come from a different background. They had their own resources, internal resources in their homeland, and now they are in a different country because of war, violence, or persecution. And most probably they have lost all their internal, not all, but a great amount of their internal resources. And now they need more or new resources to be part of that community and to go on with their life. And we call them, we refer to them as resilience. So we need to build all these internal resources so that they can be part of that community. So the very basic reason for teaching in language instruction, teaching such topics or focusing on such topics is that. And proficiency in additional languages provides new opportunities for education and employment. This is very important. So imagine a Syrian or Afghan student in Turkey. So without the knowledge of Turkish, it's most probably they will face some employment problems because in the mainstream, the education, I mean, the language is Turkish. So if they plan to be employed here and serve here, at some point they would definitely need Turkish to be able to do their job appropriately, or at least to meet the basic requirements. So proficiency in additional languages like Turkish, apart from their mother tongue, Turkish or English, would help them to find new opportunities in terms of education and employment. And proficiency in key languages gives people a voice to tell their story in various contexts. That's very important. So as we all know, they come from a very, let's say, saddening background because of war, violence. So knowing another language like Turkish or English, they would be able to tell their story to these people. So I'm coming from this background, I faced this problem, or sometimes they lost all their relatives, even their families. So they would be able to tell their stories if they know Turkish or English. So knowing additional languages would give them voice. And language learning can bolster social cohesion and intercultural education or understanding. So what do you understand when I say social cohesion and intercultural understanding? How could language instruction help build social cohesion and intercultural understanding? Any ideas, any guesses?
Do you think in Turkey we have social cohesion in terms of Syrian refugees and the mainstream Turkish people?
No.
They are not in harmony in Turkey.
We can't hear you.
Yeah.
Who was speaking?
Yeah, it's me.
Cansu?
They are not in harmony.
They are not in harmony.
Yeah, in Turkey.
Yeah.
All right. So do they have any kind of adaptation problems?
They have adaptations in Turkey.
Just maybe like if you type, because when you speak, you break up too much and we can't really hear you. So it might be better to, and she's gone.
Right. All right. All right. It's obvious that people coming from different cultural backgrounds find it hard to adapt to a new culture, new ways of living. So in language instruction or through language instruction or in language classrooms, we can help these people to find their way around in these new communities. So for example, when teaching English or when teaching Turkish to Syrian students, we can embed cultural or sociocultural issues into our instructional practices so that we can give some kind of messages or help them find their way around in Turkey. So that, and this way we will help them to be part of that community or part of the country where they live, and this will help them build social cohesion and intercultural understanding. So if they have intercultural understanding, I mean, for example, they will see differences between their own culture and the target culture. That means, for example, Turkey. So seeing these differences just as differences would help them build tolerance and respect rather than seeing these differences as threats. And language learning activities can be supportive inventions to address the effects of loss, displacement, and trauma. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. And building the capacity of language teachers can strengthen the resilience of the formal and non-formal education system in host communities. So it is also important that we need to empower language teachers in terms of instructing refugee students. Just a minute ago, Nurten was talking about a Syrian student in the class, and the teacher said, or he or she is just a refugee, and the teacher didn't care about a student. But we all believe that we don't have that luxury. I mean, all people have the right to education, to live. So as language teachers, we have that responsibility. And let me give an example here as well. In the first semester, I was observing some students at their practicum course. And in the course there, I mean, in one of the classes, there was a Syrian student. I don't remember his name exactly because it was a little bit complicated for me to memorize. But the students in the classroom and also the teacher referred to that or called the student Shakir. But indeed, the student had a different name. And when I asked the practicum, I mean, the students, my students, why do you call this student Shakir? They said, well, we all, I mean, the whole class discussed, and because they couldn't name him correctly, I mean, pronounce his name correctly, they referred to him as Shakir. And I was really unhappy too, because maybe that student was not happy with being called Shakir, but he would rather prefer his name being used. So kind of empowering our language teachers in terms of instructing these refugee students, it's also very important. Oh my goodness. All right. So the role of language learning activities can serve as a basis for developing individual and community resilience. So on the individual basis, we can help our students, I mean, our refugee students to feel empowered, because obviously they come from a very saddening background. as I said before, because of war, violence, or persecution. So they need some resources to build on, and so that they can continue with their life. So we can ensure dignity, self-sufficiency, and life skills through language learning activities as well. For example, in a classroom, in the language classroom, we can come up with activities in which we embed cultural issues. For example, ordering at the food at a restaurant, or going to the hospital for some kind of treatment. So we can embed all these activities from our own background and from other cultural backgrounds, and we can help our students to acquire life skills to live in the community where they live. We can increase refugee integration and protection as well. And we can forge new social networks and interaction with the wider community. So in language classrooms, if we provide appropriate activities and or tasks, we can help all these students build networks and interaction with each other, because sometimes these students, refugee students, can feel marginalized because they don't have the necessary, or maybe not necessary, language skills or the life skills to be part of that community. Through our language instruction, we can help these students build these networks and interaction, and then be part of that community so that they can live in cohesion with the target community. And we can strengthen opportunities to build greater social cohesion, as I just mentioned. So in terms of building institutional resilience, the purpose is to facilitate teacher development opportunities that raise awareness of methodologies which, that's very important, promote social interaction and understanding, develop inclusive pedagogy. Before we move on, so what do you understand from inclusive pedagogy? We talked about that in the previous webinars. What do you remember inclusive pedagogy? What does it mean? Or what is inclusive education? All right, any guesses, any ideas, opinions? All right, inclusive pedagogy basically means that, so we know that our students come from different, that's the key term, different sociocultural backgrounds, and they have their own ways of learning. And with these differences in mind, we need to address all students to be part of the classroom. And for that, we need to apply inclusive pedagogy, inclusive methodologies to be able to kind of integrate all the students in the classroom. And facilitate multilingual learning. That's important as well, because obviously they come from different language backgrounds. And if we build institutional resilience, we will be able to address students coming from different language backgrounds. And focus on student-centered learning. So all these things will be possible through institutional resilience. And support teacher and student well-being is one of the last point that we can mention here. So let's now focus on Turkey. So in Turkey, we need to first identify our context for ourselves and for our students as well. But we know that in Turkey, from kindergarten to 12th grades, the basic language of instruction is Turkish. And in higher education, it's also Turkish and English. So the language of instruction in Turkish context is Turkish or English. And some statistical information. And the number of students out of school refugee children as of August 2015 is 333,000 students out of 633,000. So this is a very, very big number. So refugee students are, the majority of the refugee students are out of school. They don't have access to education. And the enrollment rate is less than 30%, sorry. And the number gets low as they move towards higher grades. So in the lower grades, we have more refugee students, but as they move towards higher education, like university, this number decreases dramatically. So which means a great majority of students are out of the school. I mean, the refugee students. So in Turkey, what we need is, there is a need for children to learn Turkish to access formal education, as well as to improve the Arabic literacy rates of Syrian children. Also, there is need for emphasis on the role for English language learning in giving an international voice for Syrian inside and outside of the country. So if they know English, they would probably find some platform where they can tell their stories and people can hear their voice, and hopefully at the end of the day, they can provide some support or help to these students. And we also need programs that teach Turkish in a communicative way for everyday life, to access public services, as I mentioned, just, healthcare, training and employment as well. So Turkish is the key term. I mean, their knowledge of Turkish is the key here. So the difficulty parents have in communicating with the school, oftentimes the parents of refugee students cannot communicate with the school administration because of the language barriers. So because of that language barrier, there's a disconnection between the parents and the school administration, and that's why they cannot address the needs of the students appropriately. So we need to kind of help these parents to learn Turkish so that they can be supportive in their children's education as well. And also the risk of isolation for women who are unable to speak Turkish and live in cities far from the border. So if they are close to the border, like the cities close to the Syrian border, they have, people living in these areas, at some point they know Arabic so that they can communicate with the refugee parents. But as they go far from the border, it's obvious that the number of people speaking Arabic language decreases. And because of that decrease, oftentimes parents cannot speak. And because they cannot speak, they cannot be part of the community. And because of that, we lose, we don't have communal cohesion. Also, there is need for teacher training how to include, this is very important, to include students in classes where their home language is not Turkish. Also, and we need training and support for Syrian volunteer teachers in temporary education centers. So there are some opportunities in Turkey, for example, temporary education centers. So these are centers where a kind of Syrian curriculum is implemented, and mostly Syrian teachers are employed to teach refugee students. So at least in these centers, students feel comfortable a little bit because the instruction is oftentimes provided in Arabic, and the Syrian curriculum is followed, and because Syrian teachers are employed. Also YUVA. So YUVA is a non-governmental organization. They teach Turkish, and also they kind of design or apply some exams like TOEFL or IELTS. And so now this organization is collaborating, or is in a process of negotiation with the ministry to get the permission to provide some certificates to refugee students, so that these students can have these certificates and find their way or be employed in some places in Turkey. So paper airplanes, this is a organization. They provide, I don't remember the name, the exact number of the weeks. I guess it's 16 to 12 weeks, right, Edeniz? All right, so they provide kind of instruction. They have 5 basic programs. So like teaching Turkish is one of them. So teaching technology skills, there are a lot of
as well.
do you mind repeating that?
They provide English lessons as well.
Yeah, so English, technology, Turkish, these are some basic courses they provide. So they find, they match somebody with you, and you study with this person. It's a kind of tutoring system. So you learn Turkish or technology skills or English, and then, excuse me? Somebody said something, or was it my voice echoing? All right. So you have your tutor, and then you go on with your study 6 to 12 weeks. You can, the links to the websites are provided here, so you can visit these websites after the webinar as well.
So Paper Airplanes actually emailed us, my institution here, and they want to have us as a partner. So they want to establish like this partnership where our students here who are going to be teachers will do online tutoring with the students in Turkey. And that's how we found out about this organization.
That is super good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you planning to provide what kind, I mean, Turkish education or English or some technology education, because they have different programs?
They were interested in, because our students are studying to be English teachers, most of them. So it's mostly English education.
Very good. So maybe sometime in future or for your project, even you can plan something like this. Why not? So there are also some national and international guidelines that provides a kind of how to help the refugee students in Turkey. Also, there are some trainings for school principals and teacher coordinators to help these refugee students. I know from Bahçeşehir University, they had a program, and each year they provided education to language teachers, English or Turkish language teachers, and these teachers taught refugee students in some camps or in some schools. And you know, there are universities, there are organizations that kind of try to do something for refugee students and for teachers who are going to teach refugee students. So we're going to, are we going to listen to the song?
Do you want to stop sharing and then I'll continue from.
So Deniz, should I share my screen or should we go on with yours?
I'll continue with mine.
All right. So before we move on, so what did you understand from this song? What messages are given?
I actually love the part, we can work it out and get it straight, or say goodnight. Or say goodnight is very powerful, I think.
All right. What else? What about other people? Which line did you like most? Line or lines? Could be.
And also there is a chance that we may fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Line is beautiful again.
And I like the lines, while you see it your way, run the risk of knowing that our love may soon be gone. It's very important that we see people from their own perspective, not from our perspective. So if we take the issue just from our own perspective, it is certain that we will have some clashes or conflicts at the end of the day, and these conflicts will last or will eradicate the conclusion that we're likely to attain at the end of the day. So it's important that we have different perspectives, or we try to see issues from the other people's perspective. And that's very important for us to build social cohesion and empathy and build respect and tolerance. So Deniz, I'm ready to go on. The same song was sung by an Israeli and Palestinian singer. So we're going to listen again, Deniz?
Yeah.
All right.
Try to see it my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can't go on? While you see it your way, run the risk of knowing that our love may soon be gone. We gotta work it out. We gotta work it out. Think of what you're saying. If you get it wrong and still you think that it's alright, think of what I'm saying. We can work it out and get it straight or say goodnight. We gotta work it out. We gotta work it out. Life is very short and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend. I have always thought that it's a crime, so I will ask you once again. Try to see it my way, or the time will tell if I am right or I am wrong. While you see it your way, there's a chance that we might fall apart before too long. We gotta work it out. We gotta work it out. Life is very short and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend. I have always thought that it's a crime, so I will ask you once again. Try to see it my way, or the time will tell if I am right or I am wrong. So why you see it your way, there's a chance that we might fall apart before too long. We gotta work it out. We gotta work it out. I know we can work it out. You and me at least.
So we know that Israel and Palestine have a long war going on, and seeing this song sung by two singers from these two countries is very important. It gives a lot of messages in terms of the war between these two countries. And yeah.
Are you still discussing the song or moving on to the?
Yeah, I'll move on to the picture. I mean, the art.
Okay, I just want to add something about the song. Have you noticed something about the way that they perform the song?
They were so cheerful, I think.
Okay, they were cheerful and
the guitar is played by a woman. I noticed it also.
like in concerts, like singers usually face the audience, right?
Yeah.
These two singers were facing each other, and then looking at like each other's eyes. and you could see like they were communicating with their eyes as well. So that's why this song, I mean, this video was really popular back in the days, because like it was an act of peace building between Israeli and Palestine. And then the fact that like these two singers from different backgrounds were like singing it to each other, but not for the audience, was like, it's that actually made this video very powerful.
Very good point. Thank you, Denise. All right, and there are different forms of building peace and helping refugee people. So here is this is an art contest by the United Nations, Art for Peace 2012. So it's international art contest for young people, and these are some pictures painted by different people. So there are different ways of giving messages. It could be music, it could be art. We can give a lot of messages in terms of peace and immigration and refugee rights as well. So I think we can go back to our presentation if you like, Denise. You can visit the website later on as well. So why not language teachers? So we can give a lot of messages, and we can help or build support in terms of peace building as well. And I think this is my part. So Denise will take on. Yeah, thank you.
So thanks, Adnan. So I'll take it from here, and I'll discuss why peace building is important for language teachers. And you see here in this figure that peace is not just for me or for us, but for everyone and for the planet. So we can't really, we included this topic in our webinars because it's something like environmental education that we cannot really avoid or ignore or say, not my problem, not my community, not my, world. No, this is something happening in our world, and this is something that we should be aware of and actively involved in the fight against it. So I'm going to talk about peace building and what peace building is. It's a process of establishing peaceful relationships. So when you look at the definition, it's very simple, right? Having good relationships with everyone and loving everyone and etc. But we know that it's not that simple. So when we talk about peace building, we talk about empathy and understanding the lived experience of those different from us. So these are the key in building relationships and breaking down barriers. And here, I want to underline again, the lived experience of the other, where they come from, what they have gone through to bring them here today. So peace building is created through the work of individuals. And I already mentioned this a bit, that this is not something that we can, ignore, but if we participate in peace building, then we can maintain peace building. But it's not something that will be solved overnight by just individual efforts, that, everybody should be involved in this process. That's why, English language classrooms are excellent places for this transformation, to engage our youth in conversations about peace and conflict. What does peace mean? What does conflict mean? And we always see conflict as something negative, but sometimes conflicts actually bring about good results. And it's not something that we should avoid, but we should learn how to benefit from. We can also use language classrooms and our lessons as a ways to develop critical thinking skills and the skills to manage conflict, and to understand how our learners can participate in peace building both individually and collectively. So we talked about content-based language instruction in our webinars and throughout in our first seminar and the webinars as well. And here content-based learning is more important because through content-based instruction, you can raise awareness about conflict, styles of conflict management, the effects of individual and collective trauma, violence, issues of justice, truth, forgiveness, and reconciliation. So all these things actually, by bringing text, by engaging students in conversations, you can actually cultivate all these skills. So reducing prejudice and stereotypes. We talked about like prejudice and stereotypes in relation to gender and LGBTQ issues. Building relationships, communicating effectively, and using negotiation to manage disagreements. So all these are important, and they show us that, you know, like that we can achieve these things in language classrooms because they are natural sites for teaching peace building. So I'll discuss 5 principles for teaching peace building. And the first one is emphasizing multiple perspectives. So conversations on difficult topics to experience and learn different perspectives. This is important. This is like, you know, Dila, for instance, brought about the Kurdish issue, and it's a very sensitive issue in our society, and people actually have very diverse opinions. But this is an issue. This is not something that we can, you know, turn our backs on and, you know, and ignore and, you know, and keep having the same problems. We should find ways to discuss these issues in our classrooms and see if we can actually bring up, like, you know, suggest solutions. The second one is really important, cultivation of the capacity to listen to one another and truly hear what the other has to say. And this is why we had the first, you know, paper folding activity, because not necessarily when we listen, that means we are hearing what the other person is saying. As Adnan said, you know, we have these filters, we have our own background knowledge, we have our own perspectives. So whatever we hear, actually, we, you know, we interpret them according to our own like body of knowledge. So we should actually, you know, set aside our own prejudices and stereotypes and see, like, you know, okay, what is this person actually saying? How do we deal with disagreements? Should we avoid disagreements in our classrooms, or should we embrace them? This is a question for you. No idea?
Actually, we should respect negative sides of such things. I mean, disagreements. But we should manage to come up with evidences to put a fight against such disagreements.
Mm-hmm. So should we avoid disagreements, or should we find ways to benefit from the disagreements?
We should benefit from them.
Should benefit from them, right? Because it's all about hearing what the other person's saying. So if we avoid disagreements, or if we don't talk about difficult topics that need to avoid like disagreements or conflict, that means we're not hearing the other person, and we should give them a chance to talk about themselves.
Exactly.
So disagreements are natural and a healthy part of conversations, and they give us the opportunity to clarify our own perspectives. Because when I disagree with you, I need to think about why I'm saying and what I'm saying and why I'm saying it, and I also need to think about, like, you know, if what you're saying informs my own opinions and perspectives. So it gives a chance to mediate our thinking processes. So another question, what do you do when both sides are right? So in the Syrian conflict, like, you know, the problems that we have here, half of the population, or majority of our population, says, you know, like, we can't afford to have Syrian refugees. We are barely, you know, feeding our own children or sending our own children, and, you know, we pay taxes, but they don't pay any tax, and they go to school and they benefit from health insurance and etc. But then there is the Syrian crisis. They don't have a land, they don't have homes. Then what? Any ideas?
Maybe work together to find a solution.
Yeah.
Bright side. I'm sorry.
Yes, Iram.
Okay, bright sides of these disagreements should be discussed in the classroom to better understanding, better intercultural, international understanding. I think the bright sides are important.
Yeah. So according to Amos Oz, an Israeli author, both sides might be right? I mean, everybody has their own reasoning, but it's our role as language teachers to understand or to make sure our students understand that, the other's rights and reasons and rationale. So what makes Turkish people right when it comes to, not wanting Syrian refugees in Turkey, and what makes Syrian refugees right? And, and this is like there are no sides in this problem. And I think we need to get rid of that, us versus the other, and see this is our own problem. We share this problem, and there is no us versus them, but we only, and we need to get together and find a way. So we need to teach dialogue and not debate. Why not? What happens in debate? Have you had debates in your classes?
Not on this issue.
Mm-hmm. But what does a debate involve?
Two
They're
confronting
usually two sides.
Yes, Rayyan, you can go on. I'm sorry.
There are actually two sides or more sides in a debate. And I think Turkish people are really good at debating each other, but we don't exactly know how to, build a rapport or, build a dialogue with each other. So instead of teaching debate, we can teach dialogue.
Yeah. What makes, why do you think Turkish people are good at debating?
Because we usually don't try to talk to each other. We just yell at each other when we're just trying to explain our point of view. I see that a lot.
Yeah.
And we know everything.
They need the skill of, having a dialogue with each other.
Tila?
Because we know everything, we have lots of things to debate.
Yeah. Iram, did you want to add anything?
No, I know everything.
Okay. I think about a debate. Usually debates they have a winner, right? Oh, this group won the debate because of these reasons, and debates involve listening to find holes or gaps in their arguments, in the opponent's arguments, and attacking them, right? That's what we are told. You need to find an attacking argument point that this is what you said, but you're wrong because it's da da da da da. So debates are problematic when we talk about these issues. We need to cultivate dialogue, because in dialogues there is no winner or loser. We are all winners or losers when it comes to problems, because we are suffering from these problems all together. And dialogues also involve listening to enhance one's understanding of a topic and to hear the speaker's intended meaning. So this is all about dialogue, right? Being able to convey my own ideas and being able to hear the other person's voice or ideas and perspectives.
again, I guess this is very important. So when we talk or when we have a dialogue or try to have a dialogue, oftentimes what we do is we try to focus on our answers so much we forget listening to other and hear their voices. And that's why oftentimes we end up with having really, really fierce debates, as Rayan mentioned.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Yeah. So continuing with our principles, I engage students in interactive lessons using creativity, such as role play, small group work, large group discussion. And here the goal is to move students from the abstract to the concrete and to encourage them to make decisions about how they will act when faced with conflict and what can be done to address conflicts beyond the interpersonal level. So I think the idea here is that, like, immigrants are not my problem. No, like, they are my problem. I have to see the evidence that, these problems are part of our lives. Like, I need to make sure that, the concrete becomes, the abstract becomes concrete. And I see, that's why, in all our webinars, we started with some sort of like statistics or videos. We wanted to show not like what happens in the world, but also in Turkey as well, so that to show you that these problems are real and we have them like right under our own nose. Share real stories, enable them to hear the voices of other people whose lives have been affected by conflict. Stories are powerful. They make abstract concepts more real, more concrete, and they also cultivate empathy. And this is why we actually have the Share Your Story page now on our web page. And please send it to your friends and your classmates, so that they can post their stories there and be a part of this community of practice as well, so that everybody will hear their stories. This is important, and I think we mentioned this in our earlier webinars as well, that leaves students feeling empowered but not in despair. Don't send them home feeling hopeless about their future. Help them develop their own capacity as peace builders. So this is why project work is really important, so that they'll see okay, I can do something about this problem. So these teaching practices and principles aim to enhance students' understanding of the other, who the other person is and where that person comes from. And that's why we as educators must reflect on who we are, our own perspectives and background. I liked it in the video that we first watched. I don't know if you caught that about who is refugee and who is an immigrant. It said talk to your grandfathers, grandmothers, or grandfathers if they're alive. And I'm sure we didn't land in Turkey. We moved from Asia, to Anatolia, and it was a long journey. And we were once immigrants or refugees. And some of us, I don't know if you did that. I think it was in the summer that there was a soyacı kütüğü or something like that. So I looked it up, and apparently my father's grandfather was born in Selanik in 1881, the same year that Atatürk was born. So our ancestors came from all over the world, and we need to question these things, who we are and where we came from, and maybe we were once Syrian refugees at one point in our lives. What stories we want to share with our colleagues and students? So we need to think about these things, because sharing stories builds trust and contributes to understanding the other person and cultivating empathy. And this way we allow our students to see the humanity within us, and and to see the humanity within others, because at the end of the day we are both human beings. So we have challenges in terms of publishers, and we talked about like textbooks and materials and etc. And this adds to that discussion. Publishers avoid controversial issues to ensure marketability. So they want to make sure that they don't touch any, critical issue. So do you know what parsnip is? It's their principle, parsnip. It stands for something. It's an acronym. So it means no politics, no alcohol, no religion, no sex, no narcotics, no isms, like no feminism, communism, fascism, etc., etc., and no pork. Interestingly, right? Yeah. So they avoid all the topics that go under one of these domains, which leads us to the women's magazine world of EFLE's course materials. So when you look at our textbooks, it displays a perfect life. Oh, we talk about the royal wedding and friendship and going out Saturday night and traveling and paragliding, and such a beautiful world, and no problems, no conflict, no immigrants, nothing. Right, like it's kind of like Elle magazine or Glamorous, or I don't know, the Turkish magazines in Turkey. Language teachers think they do their part to contribute to world peace, because we teach culture and we facilitate travel. So we talk about like intercultural communication, etc. But that's not even close to establishing peace building. So we need to find ways to incorporate peace building knowledge, skills, and values into our courses. So strategies for welcoming diversity while maintaining safety. Building a community of practice through a variety of activities, knowing the students in our classrooms, where they come from, and also allowing our students to do the same, like, know your neighbor first, right? So you can use icebreakers. Do you know what an icebreaker is? So these are activities that you do usually at the beginning of a course, or usually at the the beginning of the semester, so that everybody gets to know each other. Have you ever activity?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. So you give your students a list of questions. Have you ever seen the Eiffel Tower, or more realistic one, maybe have you ever seen Anıtkabir, or have you ever been to Cappadocia, things like that? And they walk around in the classroom and they ask questions, and these are real questions. They get real authentic answers. So it's a communicative activity, but at the same time it establishes a community. They're like, oh my God, she's she has done this. During the orientation that we had here, we asked students the cool things that they have done, or like the things that they want us to know of each other. And somebody said that she is a scuba diver teacher and studying here to be a language teacher. And I still remember her, and she hasn't taken any of my courses, but I know, like, whenever they talk about, they say Anne, and I'm like, oh, she's a scuba diver teacher. So these things actually help us, like, remember each other and understand, like, our backgrounds. You should be asking open-ended questions that don't have right or wrong answers. And this is something that we never do in language classes, because we use a textbook and we ask questions based on the textbook. It's usually, when did this happen according to the text? So factual questions, not interpretive questions. And this is really important because, like, I think that our generation sees everything as black or white. Something is either right or incorrect or correct, black or white, but we never talk about the gray area, or we don't see things as a continuum that we can actually meet somewhere in between. So you can discuss critical incidents for intercultural encounters without one correct answer. Maintain flexibility to allow for students' personal stories when they emerge, but you should never force them to share their stories if they don't feel comfortable. So if you have, Syrian students in your classroom, ask them to do a presentation. Like if they don't speak Turkish or English, they can just bring pictures and then show pictures, and you will still understand where this person is coming from. Use various artistic media, music, visual arts, mime, film clips, and etc. We showed you 2 videos of songs, a website that uses art for peace building. So encourage these things, because then you will be addressing a larger audience or different learning styles, and and then ask them to express their own opinions. This is important, and I think we mentioned this in the other webinars as well, that invite and introduce other voices into the classroom. So if you have, somebody like a refugee in the area, or an older person, or somebody who went through these processes but now living in Turkey, invite them to your classrooms, ask them to talk about themselves, their stories, and etc. Because it's all about raising awareness at the end of the day, being aware of that, these people are alive and they have gone through all these suffering and survive somehow, and maybe they will have solutions to share. So this takes us to our last topic of today's webinar, differentiated instruction. And any questions so far?
Before we move on with differentiated instruction, I'd like to add one point. So the lived experiences of these refugee people could be a solution to our own problems, because we live in a very diverse community. As Turkey, we're very diverse, and these people have the refugee people have a lot of problems, and building on their problems, we can help them to overcome them, but also their problems could be some solutions to ours.
So I don't know if you remember what we said about differentiated instruction. Does it ring a bell? We talked about it during the webinar, the first seminar actually. Okay. So according to William Ayers, there is no formula or recipe that works for all learners in all times. There is no set of lesson plans or units that can engage the range of learning styles, approaches, and intelligence that are likely to gather in one classroom. This means that, this is why we don't give you a recipe of things to do and things not to do, because your students, every time you face a new classroom, they are going to be different. We can only provide you principles and suggestions, but it's your responsibility to choose from those principles and adjust them into your own context. So we're going to watch this video that explains what differentiated instruction is.
I'm Larry Filazzo. Differentiating instruction. To some educators, it conjures visions of having to create a different lesson for every student in the room and long nights of planning and grading. That insanity is not what differentiation is all about. Differentiating instruction is really a way of thinking, not a pre-planned list of strategies. Oftentimes, it is making decisions in the moment based on this mindset. It's recognizing that, to paraphrase Rick Wormerling, fair doesn't always mean treating everyone equally. It's recognizing that all of our students bring different gifts and challenges, and that as educators, we need to recognize those differences and use our professional judgment to flexibly respond to them in our teaching. Carol Tomlinson talks about the ability to differentiate in 3 areas: content, process, and product. For content, student choice is one way we might differentiate. like allowing students to choose their research topics or essay prompts. As teachers, we need to keep our eyes on the prize. In other words, we have to keep asking ourselves, what are the main learning objectives? One day, my students were writing an argument essay about what would be the worst natural disaster to experience. John's head was down the desk. He was not doing anything. I knew that he was interested in football, so I told him that he could write an essay on why his favorite team was the best. He would still have to make an argument just about football instead of hurricanes or earthquakes. His eyes lit up. He got to work and wrote what his mother later told me was the first essay he had ever written in school. He had followed all the guidelines of a good argument essay. The prize, in this case, was learning to write an argument essay, not learning to write about natural disasters. To differentiate by process, teachers can change up how they group students. Sometimes a mixed ability group might work best, while sometimes it might be appropriate to have same ability groups. We might have an English proficient buddy work with an English language learner to help them out. During independent reading time in my early morning class several years ago, one student tended to fall asleep. I told him that if he wanted, he could go to the back and sit on a desk and read. Soon, several others joined him. A few days later, I saw another student dozing off. Before I could say anything, one of his classmates whispered to him, "Just go sit on a desk." Again, it's a matter of keeping our eyes on the prize. What are the learning objectives and what are the best roads to get there for different students? Teachers can also differentiate by the type of product students create. The major demonstration of learning doesn't always have to be an essay or a multiple choice test. One year I had a student who liked to doodle when other students or I were talking. I told her it was okay as long as she was doodling about the information we were discussing. She built on those doodles to create a final project that brilliantly and visually represented all the key points we had covered. When I give tests, I often give students an extra blank page where they can write anything else they remember about the topic being tested that they think is important. I often find the quality of thinking and writing better there than in response to my test questions. None of the differentiating strategies I've mentioned have created any extra work for me. They did require that I had relationships with my students to know their strengths, challenges, and interests. And I needed to demonstrate flexibility in my thinking. Making these strategies successful also required building a strong class culture so that some of the students were being treated differently and they understood why. And they understood that that was the only way to be truly fair. The ideas mentioned here are just a drop in the bucket. There are a zillion other ways we can support our students' gifts and challenges. We just need to keep our minds and ears open.
So what are some key words or phrases that you picked up from this video in relation to differentiated instruction?
We don't have to prepare a separate lesson plan for each student. We just need to keep in mind that we have different students and they may like different things. So we come up with ideas in a lesson.
Mm-hmm. What else?
Also, our relationship with our students should be strong. We need to know the students and we don't need extra work to focus on differentiated instruction.
Mm-hmm.
I think we shouldn't force them to do something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like the part that it said like fair doesn't mean equal, right? That's what we've been all along. So differentiated classrooms support students who learn in different ways and at different rates, because we cannot assume that all students learned in the same way. And then they like differentiated classrooms also support students who bring different talents and interests to schools. I mean, I might not be interested in hurricanes or natural disasters, but like, you know, or maybe sports or maybe the cooking or, you know, other things. Like everybody has something that they are interested in. but we need to like, you know, do some work to learn like our students and, you know, and their needs and interests. Differentiated classrooms work better for a wide range of students than do one-size-fits-all settings. This is what we do usually. We prepare lesson plans and we have like unit plans and etc. And we assume that it's going to fit everyone, but it rarely does. Okay, so we have I have an activity for you, and we're going to put you in breakout sessions again. And this time we're going to give you a set of scenarios which are available in the Google form that I'll, you know, forward you in a little bit. And we want you to decide in your groups if the teacher is differentiating or not. So if yes, then we want you to identify if there is differentiation in terms of content, process, or product. If not, then we want you to find ways for differentiation. Like, what would you suggest for this teacher to do? So did you open the link?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I think you need to decide like who is going to take notes and then who is going to report your discussion. Actually, we can do this item by item, so you don't need to select a spokesperson this time, yeah. Okay, but decide like, you know, who is going to take notes, okay?
I can take notes.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Do you want me to read every point, or do you have it open? Can you read it?
Yes, I can read now.
We can do it ourselves.
Okay. So I think there's no differentiation in the first.
If not, how can it be kind of adjusted to include differentiation? And while you are discussing the questions, I'll write the answers. And before we begin, let's choose our speakers or speaker as well, so that we don't kind of have a clash or conflict when we're in the main room.
Actually, because this is item by item, they don't need one person, so.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have 4 scenarios in total, and everyone can take one and then speak when we're in the main room. So ready for the first scenario?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Owen assigns the same homework to all students in his class. He knows which home tasks will
Are we talking about the second one?
Yeah, I guess. Because the first one doesn't have any differentiation. Do you have any other suggestions for the first one?
I thought if he knows the students well, no need for differentiating.
Yeah.
But all students cannot be same.
Yeah. But he gives them the same homework with all of them.
So there is no differentiation.
Maybe the homework parts can be different. For example, if he gives worksheets, there may be some parts, for example, puzzle, for different. There may be different activities on the homework, maybe. For I don't know.
No, that's a good point.
And second one also, Mr. Rose differentiate the
Are you guys still there?
Yep.
And I think Vildan too, but Rayyan and Nurten seem to have been frozen. Yeah, Rayyan dropped. Okay.
She has no internet connection, I guess.
Okay.
For the second one, teacher gives alternative for the students, I think. The third one.
So are we going to examine it like process product?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if there is differentiation, then is it about content, process, or product?
I think there is a differentiation in process because using first language for the first draft can be different. Like not teachers allow students to do that.
I'm taking notes for you now because Rayyan is gone, and I'll send these to her. Does everybody agree?
Yes, okay. For the third one, can you hear me? I don't know.
We can.
Yeah.
For the third one, I think teacher also differentiates for the content part. I think because as far as I read, the students should decide on their final project. There's some sort of options this time, but we can write.
What do you think, Aziz and Vildan?
Just a minute.
Nurten, can you
product?
I couldn't hear you, Hocam.
Can you repeat what you said?
Yani teacher differentiates for the content part because the students should decide on their topic about their final product. Now I don't read, but I remember it was like that.
But in fact, it relates to the final product. So the product is different. Product teacher differentiates the product, not the content, because the content is the same, but they can. He offers.
Can it be both?
It can be like if content covers everything, it can be.
No, because like if you read it, they have 3 options for the product, right? So this is definitely product, but then they can choose the options according to their interests. So then it can be content as well.
Might be.
Because the content of the product might be different.
The last one.
Rayyan.
I'm back.
I thought you must be stuck here. I came to get you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see, how do I do that? It's fine to break out a room. Okay.
Did anyone else pick up the
We
task
are
of
now
writing?
last for last one.
Okay.
I took notes.
Okay.
I'm sending them to you.
I'll write them.
I think there is, it takes place in all of them, all of the places, I think. I mean, content, process, and product. Because content is students' interest, process is...
Hold on. I'm not that much fast. Students' interest, all right.
Process is the way they develop the final project. I mean, he gives them the options.
And then we have product, right? All right. So what about product?
The product.
Actually, they develop a final product, so they
This is the product.
they produce something at the end.
Right.
And they will be different things, different kind of things.
Would you repeat that?
And they will be different kind of things because
Might be, but like assume that we have 20 students, or she has 20 students, and if she checks all of them and prepares different, let's say, spelling list, it might, or she might have some more time and effort, so it's not effective.
Before the class, maybe.
Like it requires extra time, or she can instead of just assigning same spelling list, teacher can, after the checking the assessment, teacher can give a list for the common mistakes, I mean common spelling. Maybe it can reduce the number of let's say words on that list.
So we say the teacher can give lists based on the common spelling mistakes.
Yeah, it can be.
Okay, I'm adding that. Maybe the students can teach each other about spelling.
It can work too, like it can be a pair activity.
Yeah, pair work.
But first of all, the teacher should check all those assessment papers, and after that, students can do that.
Check each other. How about the task itself? Maybe instead of working on a spelling list, they can like make posters with visuals.
Yeah, we can change the let's say product.
Say product. The first two suggestions were there about the content or the process.
Which ones?
Like the teacher can give lists based on the common spelling mistakes. Do we say content for this one?
Actually, it's product.
Okay, product. Okay, product.
The content is same, like common mistakes of students in spelling.
So I can say content and product.
So what do you think?
I think both.
I think product, maybe. In my opinion, product.
Oh, I think we should say content because it's not what the students are doing, it's the teacher. Oh, I don't know.
Tell me
I
again
don't have an idea.
what your suggestion is.
The teacher can give lists based on the common spelling mistakes. We can't decide if it is differentiation based on content or product.
Okay, so then all students are working like on the same thing still.
I think we give this after the teacher checks the assessment results.
Oh, so the teacher does this and then as a follow-up gives like, another handout with the most difficult ones.
Yeah.
To all students or?
I don't know.
Because then if every student has this, then there's no differentiation.
Yeah. Then she gives these to the students that has the most difficulty with this task.
Okay. And then is it in terms of content, process, or product?
Yeah, we can't decide.
What do you think? So she differentiates between the high achievers and low achievers, and that's something with low achievers. So I would say this is more process.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because when there's differentiation in terms of content, I say write an essay on a topic that you are interested in. So the topic, everybody writes the same kind of essay, argumentative essay, but the content is different. When I give you options in terms of you can choose from, essay, interview, blog post, then everybody produces something different, and then there is this product, right? But your example is how you get to the final product. Learning the spelling of these words is then process.
So then, someone was saying something?
Okay, does it make sense?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'll go back to the other session and see if they are finished. Okay.
So then
I guess, yeah. So should I submit now?
The other group is almost done, so I came here to see how you're doing.
All right, we're done too. So yeah, we can end it.
For the first one, I suggested maybe the teacher can use different activities. For example, in the same page there were two different activities for the students. For example, one of them could be puzzle. One of them could be fill in the blanks.
So different types of activities assessing the same linguistic item or something, like they are all about the same subject, but the types of activities are different.
Different, maybe.
The other group has submitted their responses.
Oh.
So if you wrap up within the next minute or so.
Okay. We have a suggestion for both of the questions, I guess, now. If you don't have any other suggestions, I am submitting the form.
No, I don't have any suggestions.
No.
Be done.
No.
Okay, I'm submitting. And I did. Okay.
Okay, so let's leave. I think you can leave on your own, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's meet in the main room.
Okay.
Okay, so is everybody back? You guys are back, and my group is back as well. So should we discuss the questions item by item? And we see your responses here as well. The first one was Mr. Owen assigns the same homework to all students in his class. He knows which home task will be best help to them and to understand and apply grammatical forms. So the first group said no differentiation, and the second group also said no. Do you guys want to explain why you said no? I see Dila's name here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about the first one.
Yeah, I will. We talked about the students. We said students have different strengths and weaknesses. For example, I'm not good at with writing, but I'm very good at with preparing a posters. So I may choose preparing a poster for understanding the grammatical forms. So we said different opportunities should be provided to students to choose to prepare the task. And yeah, that's all I think.
Okay. My group, who wants to do the first one?
Nurten had a suggestion on it.
Nurten,
She
do you
wants
want
to provide her suggestion?
Actually, I couldn't hear you, but I suggested that a teacher may use different types of activities and for the homework. For example, maybe he gives a worksheet, but in the worksheet maybe there were two or three different activities and types of activities, so that each student can find something to do, enjoy for the.
So is it differentiating in terms of product, process, or content?
I think
Process.
Yes, process.
Maybe content.
Maybe all.
Yeah.
Can be.
How about the first group when you have posters, audios, worksheets? I mean, it's similar to what the second group actually mentioned. Is it process, product, or content?
Process.
Yeah. The process is different, and also the product is different as well, right?
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
How about the second one? Mr. Roles encourages language learners to do initial drafts of writing in their first language if that helps them express their ideas. He also ensures that as often as possible, students have access to some online or print resource materials in their first language so that they can readily understand and relate to important concepts. So you said, both groups said there is differentiation, and there is differentiation in terms of process.
Yeah, we are totally sure that it's a differentiated instruction. And in this part, Nejat says, yes, writing in Turkish in the first step could help them write better essays. So, and Tila said that process is different. And we all think that, yeah, it's differentiated in content, process, and product. Three of them will be differentiated, I think. And this lesson attract attention of the students and gain different perspectives as well. So this is a differentiated instruction, and three part of this differentiated instructions are different: process, content, product, as well.
But why do you think product is different?
So the process changed, so product will change, I think.
Say if they are all writing argumentative essays.
But different content. So yeah, product will not change it. Exactly, and it's not written. I'm really sorry. It's just my idea. I'm sorry for my friends.
I mean, it might, depending on, like, if the teacher gives them the opportunity to write different types of essays, maybe then, but we don't see that here in this code, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything on top of what Iram said, the second group? No? Okay. The third one, Miss Enrico offers students 2 or 3 topics, options, when it's time for them to develop a final product at the end of a unit. She bases the options on students' interests, so they have the chance to link what they have learned with something what seems important and relevant to them as individuals. So you said there is differentiation, and the first group said differentiation in terms of content, process, and product, and then the second group said content and product. So maybe I'll ask the second group why they didn't include process, or if there should be process also involved. Is when you worked on a product or a project, is it the product that matters or the process that matters? Product?
I think so.
Why? I mean, do you think your process of doing your social responsibility project will be the same as Dila's?
Actually, it differs.
Yeah. So I mean, can we say there's differentiation in terms of all 3 levels?
Yeah, I guess.
Because it seems more open-ended, right? In terms of like compared to writing an essay. When you do a project, if you have options, and if you choose your options according to your interests, then you'll probably, develop something totally different and go through maybe different processes.
Yeah.
Well,
different steps, basically.
Yeah. And the last one is about Mrs. Wiggins, who assigns students the same spelling list without checking the assessment results because she assumes that all 3rd graders should work on list number 3. And you said no, both groups. Why?
Because there is no differentiation.
There is no differentiation. Everybody works on the same list.
Yeah.
So how can we add differentiation into this teacher's lesson?
Our group's speaker is Nejati, so I guess Nejati, you are ready to speak.
Yes, I was waiting. Actually, as both group states, there is no differentiation at all because there is the same spelling lists, and the teacher didn't check the assessment results, and she applies it again, thinks that they should work on list 3. So Dilan mentioned that some of the students may already know the meanings, some of the meanings or some of the spellings of words in list 3, and or vice versa. I mean, some students may not know some of the words or spellings because the teacher didn't check the results. I mean, she didn't assess the results. So we suggested that 3 or more different spelling lists could be provided depending on the assessment results. I mean, if the teacher don't check the assessment results, there is no point in providing three or more spelling lists. So we thought that assessment is the most important one in this occasion.
Mm-hmm. Okay. My group?
We had 3 different suggestions. The first one is based on the fact that she needs to assess these results. Like, without checking the results, she can't actually do much about the student's development. So we assumed that she checked the mistakes, and based on the common mistakes, the common spelling mistakes, she can give a kind of specialized list to the students who received the lowest grades from this assessment result. And I think this is about process differentiation. The second suggestion is pair work. The students can check each other's mistakes and they can come up with a solution to that. Like, one student can spell apple right while the other student spells it wrong, so they can help each other. So this is again about the process. And we have another suggestion on product. Like, they can make posters with visuals. Like, you can't just learn words and spelling just based on writing them. And in this way, by making posters, the teacher actually can see the results better. She doesn't have to go through the list. The students already have a product based on that, so I think it can help too.
Mm-hmm. Any questions you have regarding differentiation?
No.
Okay. So we are actually at the end of our last webinar, and I have a couple of things to share and a couple of announcements to make. That's what I want to share. Okay, do you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So for your so this is first an announcement. Please catch up on your lesson plans and your blogs, and also please go back into your blogs and approve the things that we shared with you, our comments and etc. Because it's really important that they are not just there posted, but we are actually reading them and commenting on them. If you ever have the time, this is of course not a requirement. Look at what you have done, see if you can give feedback to each other. This is really important as well.
One point with the approving the posts. So without your permission, I sometimes log into your accounts and approve the comments. And honestly, I'm not happy with that because it's like I'm interfering with something and I'm doing something wrong. So please just be aware of that. So as Denise said, just log into your accounts at times, and if there is a kind of comment, click on the comment so that you can see every comment. And below the comment, it says approve or delete. We will be happy if you approve so that I won't log into your accounts. By the way, I couldn't log into 2 people's accounts because they changed their passwords.
Yeah.
So hopefully next time you will approve yourselves and I won't be.
And also Bill is reading your blogs and your lesson plans as well. So please, he sent us an email saying that I don't see my comment on the student blog. And we're telling the students to share them. But yeah, please. By the way, Bill will be more involved in our project, starting with of course, the blogs and lesson plans and your social responsibility projects as well. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But going back to your last blog post, this is an easier one than the ones that we assigned earlier. So keeping in mind your practicum or teaching context or the most recent context that you have taught, which one of the activities in the link below, and this link is also shared on Canvas, you would use for peace building, and please explain why. So the link, the goal of the task is actually twofold. One is to get you familiarized with this organization. It's the United States Institute of Peace, and they provide lots of lessons and activities for peace building. So we want you to go to that web page, familiarize yourself, see what sources are available, and as part of your blog post, say a couple of things about which lesson or which activity that you would use, and maybe talk about your context, describe this is the context that I'm teaching. That's why I found this activity useful, and I can use this, to do this and to do that. So that's your blog post. This is a list of important organizations. The Center for Justice and Peacebuilding, they have lots of amazing resources, and so does the United States Institute of Peace, the link that we just talked about. So they have classroom resources, lesson and activities, and then the Art for Peace is the one that Adnan actually showed earlier. And you have lots of, again, lesson plans, sample lesson plans. I think are these posted on Canvas? I mean, we'll check and make sure
some of them are.
These are also posted. The sample lesson plans are posted. There are 2 peace building kits for middle and high schools also posted on Canvas. And if you're interested in these issues, they are really interested. They are really interesting. These are sources and references. So one thing that I want to show you before you leave, Adnan, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm okay with everything you said.
Do you see the Canvas page?
Not yet.
Okay.
We still see the PowerPoint.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay. So these are our webinars and the sources and etc. When you come towards the end, you see social responsibility projects and you see your names. So at this point, we're not going to be seeing you weekly as we have been doing for the last month. So all our communications will be mostly written through email. We are happy to Zoom, do quick chats as well, but we need to schedule those. But other than that, we will actually send you guidelines in terms of how to proceed to the next stage of the project. But at this point, use Canvas to communicate with us. So instead of sending us individual emails, because you send me a question and then I involve Bill and then I send the question to Bill and then I forward the email to Adnan, but Adnan doesn't know what we said and etc. So it gets very complicated. We want to be involved in your projects as much as possible. That's why we need to be equally informed about everything that happens in your projects. So if you go here, click and submit your question, then I'll see it, Bill sees it, Adnan sees it, and then I'll respond, and then Adnan will see my comment, and then he responds, I'll see his comment. So we'll be all working together. This will help us a lot. Okay.
And anytime you can go back and see whatever has been written regarding your project.
Yeah, exactly. So like everything is going to be in one place. You can also share materials here. So when you come, say you reply, I'll show you how to do it because Canvas is a bit tricky. So, you know, you don't see any, oh, you can attach from here.
Because I enabled the button.
Okay, great. Okay. I was gonna show this file option, upload a new file, but you have the option here. So yeah, okay, great. So yeah, you can also attach things because like, you know, we'll probably want to see your lesson plans, activities, you know, the things that you're doing. So this is perfect. Going back here, sample social responsibility projects. So we will probably add things here to give you ideas. So here, what you see, this is the actually UN's project, global goals, and you see like how people, like for instance, these people did something about Melati and Isabel Wishsan from Bali, worked on life below water, and they talked about what they have done. And then you see Elif Bilgin from Turkey, responsible consumption and production and climate action. And then, you know, she talks about what she's done and, you know, other projects here as well. So these might give you an idea. And as we come across things, we'll update our sources here. Yeah. Any questions? So for this webinar, again, you have the blog task and you have the lesson plans. And as you post your things, we are trying to give them feedback on a timely manner. And yeah, Adnan and I will come up with a timeline for your social responsibility projects and share it with you very soon as well.
All right. So just one point to mention, please do share your ideas in Canvas discussion board. So under your name, just share your ideas, possible project options, so that we can just give you some suggestions and work to find our way around with your project. Some people have just shared their project with us, and there are really nice ideas. So please do share yours as well. And if you have no idea, still do contact us and we can suggest something or we can discuss and then come up with something.
Okay. Any questions, guys? Or folks using gender neutral language?
Do we have a deadline for the project? I mean, is it until May?
So we'll decide on the timeline and let you know. It's going to be probably like sometime in April, a little bit before the symposium. I mean, it should be complete by the symposium. That's for sure. That's when you talk about the thing. But we might actually have the deadline maybe a week or 2 weeks before, so that you can wrap up things.
Right. Yeah,
I kind of have a timeline for my project. I thought that I would do it in the first week of May, just a week before the symposium. So should I just shorten that period, or?
But you are finishing a week before May, right? You're not.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's important. That's fine. Yeah.
Because our symposium is on the 11th and 12th of May.
Yeah, my last day is on the 3rd of May.
Yeah, that's
my
fine.
last lesson. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's okay.
Okay.
We just we want to make sure that you are using this time efficiently and you're not leaving things to the last week. Right. And then end up with problems, because that's always procrastinating is always a problem.
I have a timeline. It's okay.
Yeah.
And also, maybe you may take the last week before the symposium to prepare your presentation, because you know you're going to present your projects at the symposium. So
I
like,
have a
you kind of
question
wrap up
about it.
for your presentation. Yes,
I have
Ryan?
a question. How much time will we have for our presentations?
So we planned about 30 minutes
Okay.
for presentation, and I guess that will be okay for everybody, because we're not going to talk about every single detail of our project, but we will do our best to give as much information as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
In the meantime, though, if you have like, you know, if you have products, like, you know, videos that you are planning, or like if you want to, like, you know, so those things you can share with us in advance, and we will see how we can integrate them into our symposium, because we want to share them, like your products. So we will think about like ways to do it. Okay. So maybe like, you know, half an hour will be like, you know, you just talking about like what you have done, but not actually showing the product. Yeah.
Sorry to ask that. How can we find your feedbacks on Canvas? I don't know.
For the questions about your social responsibility project, or for the lesson plans?
Lesson plans.
So I think if you go back, you should be able to see the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go back into, are we supposed to do something after we give feedback, Adnan?
No, we just submit it, and then they are able to see everything.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I just saw.
Okay, so okay, great.
Okay. Thank you.
So you
Sorry.
see, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Great. Everybody has a more or less idea in terms of what they want to do?
Then is one more point. So some people already have an idea about their project, and they may need financial support. So please just do contact us if you need any financial support at this point, or throughout the project. Just let us know, and we can send you the financial support as soon as possible.
Yeah. Just keep in mind that everything needs to be built, like build as in like, you know, receipt, like so you like, you know, show us a receipt so that we can make you a payment.
Mm-hmm. Because we're going to submit the receipts to the embassy. I mean, we have to prove that that money is has been used for that particular perspective objective. So otherwise they will not be convinced.
Yeah. Okay, questions? Okay, guys, folks, sorry. Take care, and don't disappear. Okay, keep in touch.
Yeah,
Okay.
contact us as whenever you want.
Okay. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
See you. Take care.
Bye.
Herkes gitti mi?
Kaydı durduralım mı?
Aha, evet, çok iyi fikir. Durduruyoruz.